Pete Sampras won 14 Grand Slam titles. He did it by walking to the net. Not sometimes, almost always. Sampras served and volleyed so consistently that analysts called his strategy predictable, and he still won more majors than anyone alive at the time. That was 2002. Today, the ATP's most dominant players hit more than 70% of their shots from behind the baseline. Average forehand topspin rates exceed 3,000 revolutions per minute. Net approaches in Grand Slam finals are now statistical anomalies. Same sport, same court dimensions, completely different game. Something changed, and it wasn't the players, it was the string inside their rackets. One material, a stiff, smooth polymer barely 1.25 millimeters thick, quietly rewrote the rules of professional tennis over 30 years. It didn't arrive with a press conference or a rule change. It came in the racket of a 20-year-old nobody at the 1997 French Open. And tennis has never recovered. To understand what polyester did to tennis, you have to understand what came before it. For most of the sport's history, professional players used natural gut, strings made from the outer membrane of cow intestine. This sounds unusual, but natural gut has a remarkable property: elasticity. It stores energy on impact and fires it back, giving the player power they didn't have to generate themselves. Stringers call it the trampoline effect. With natural gut, you didn't need to swing hard. You could drive through the ball cleanly, come in behind it, and finish at the net. The strings did the work, and the game was built around that truth. John McEnroe, Stefan Edberg, Boris Becker, Pat Rafter. These weren't just great players. They were expressions of a game whose physics made net play the most efficient path to a point. Serve and volley wasn't a tactic. It was the grammar of tennis. In the 1980s, you could walk into any ATP stringing room and find almost the same thing in almost every racket: natural gut at 60 to 65 pounds. It was the standard, not because players were uncreative, because nothing else worked as well. Then, in 1994, a Belgian industrial company called Luxilon Industries released a string made from polyester. Nobody cared. For 3 years. Polyester behaved almost exactly opposite to natural gut. It was stiff. It had almost no natural power. It deadened the trampoline effect rather than amplifying it. On its own, that sounds like a worse product in every possible way. But here's what the engineers at Luxilon understood. That stiffness was hiding a different property entirely. When a polyester string is struck, it moves laterally across the ball and then snaps back to position with extraordinary speed. The snap-back effect, the friction in that fraction of a second, is what generates topspin. And with polyester, that snapback was 3 times more powerful than anything natural gut could produce. The catch: you had to swing hard to make it work. The string gave you nothing for free. But if you could commit to a full swing, if you could trust that the ball would stay in the court despite the pace you were generating, you could produce topspin that natural gut simply couldn't match. In 1994, nobody on the ATP Tour was swinging that hard from the baseline. The string sat on the shelf for 3 years. Gustavo Kuerten was 20 years old and ranked 66th in the world. He had never won an ATP title. Brazil hadn't produced a major tennis champion in 30 years. Inside his head racket, a purple polyester string called Luxilon Original. He beat Bruguera in the quarterfinals, then Muster in the semifinals, then Bruguera again in the final. 6-3, 6-4, 6-2. Sergi Bruguera was a 2-time French Open champion. Kuerten made him look ordinary. The difference wasn't tactics, it wasn't athleticism. It was that Kuerten could swing harder than anyone in the draw and still keep the ball in the court. The topspin created by his polyester strings bent the ball's trajectory in ways clay court players hadn't encountered at that pace. Andre Agassi, one of the most technically analytical players of his generation, said afterward that the most dramatic change in recent years is the strings. He was right. He was also early, because in 1997, only a handful of players understood what had just happened. Within a decade, there was no choice but to understand. The years between 2001 and 2010 represent the single greatest tactical shift in professional tennis history. Serve and volley's share of points on the ATP Tour collapsed. In 1991, roughly 1 in 5 ATP points involved a net approach. By 2010, that number had fallen below 5%. The physics explain it. When an opponent hits a baseline ball at 3,000 revolutions per minute, it clears the net with a high arc and drops sharply into the court. It arrives at an incoming net rusher at hip or chest height, exactly the position most difficult to volley from. Even perfect positioning couldn't neutralize what polyester spin did to incoming balls. Serve and volley wasn't abandoned because players got lazy or unimaginative. It was abandoned because the math stopped working. The three players who would define the next 20 years of the sport all understood this, and they each responded to polyester differently. Rafael Nadal built his entire game on full polyester. Babolat RPM blast in both mains and crosses strung at 55 pounds, low tension, to amplify the snapback further. His forehand topspin averages are still the highest on record. Peak measurements exceed 4,900 revolutions per minute. Roger Federer refused to go full polyester. He used a hybrid, natural gut in the main strings for feel, Luxolon ALU power in the crosses for durability and snapback. A compromise. It worked until the generation behind him stopped compromising.
I wanted to show you, look how I broke the string, look.
Novak Djokovic settled on almost exactly the same hybrid as Federer. Natural gut mains, polyester crosses, but at higher tension, 59 to 62 pounds. Maximum control at the cost of power, which is precisely why Djokovic built his game around defense and court coverage rather than the attacking spin that Nadal weaponized. 3 different responses to the same string. 3 different styles of tennis, all 3 built entirely around polyester. And here's where the story gets darker. Because polyester strings have a cost that nobody in the sport talks about openly, they are rigid in a way that natural gut is not. When your strings don't absorb shock, your arm does. Every ball struck with a full polyester setup sends vibration up through the frame, through the grip, through the wrist, the forearm, the elbow. Wrist and elbow injuries on the ATP Tour have risen consistently since the widespread adoption of polyester. Kei Nishikori, after a serious wrist injury, switched his main strings from polyester to natural gut. Gail Monfils has discussed arm problems publicly, players who never reached the level they should have, quietly retiring with chronic pain. There is no official ATP statistic on injury rates by equipment type. The Tour doesn't publish that data. The sport chose spin. The players paid for it. Walk into any ATP stringing room today and nearly every racket on the table carries polyester. Full poly, hybrid. But polyester is always present. Carlos Alcaraz strings Babolat RPM Blast, the same family of polyester that Nadal popularized. IGA Swiatek uses Luxolon ALU power. Jannik Sinner's forehand generates north of 3,200 revolutions per minute at baseline depth. These are the direct descendants of what Guga Kuerten did in Paris in 1997. A 20-year-old ranked 66th in the world walked onto the clay of Roland Garros with a purple polyester string and started a revolution he probably didn't fully understand. The hostile takeover is complete. But here's what's worth sitting with. Natural gut still outperforms polyester on almost every mechanical measure that matters for player health. It's more elastic, it's more forgiving, it produces a cleaner, more responsive strike. Stringers still call it the pinnacle of string technology, even 130 years after it was first introduced. The only thing polyester does better is spin, and spin became so valuable to professional tennis that everything else got traded away for it. Whether that was the right trade is a question nobody at the top of the sport is asking yet. But the last time tennis made a trade like this, a 20-year-old nobody from Brazil walked into Roland Garros and started a revolution that's still ongoing 30 years later. The next one probably already started somewhere. We just don't know what it looks like yet. Let me know what you think in the comments. If you're new here, subscribe. This is Smart Tennis.